crosses the center line, which means automatic disqualification.
Florida number 5, and there they go.
I was going to say, it looked like Mark Rathamel. It is Mark, and if you happen to be in his way, it's tough to get out of the way.
You can see the emotion on his face. This is a track where he has wanted to win his entire career.
So the historic day ends.
And obviously a lot of emotion here in Victory Lane, Marty.
And I think this is a celebration that is going to go a long time into the night.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the 19th Canadian Motorsport Hall of Fame induction. Please welcome our Master of Ceremonies, Norris McDonald.
Thank you, and I am delighted to again be acting as your Master of Ceremonies for what is now the 19th induction ceremony. And I'm particularly proud to be able to say, brought to you by Canadian Tire. You know, Canadian motorsport owes so much to this iconic Canadian corporation. And on behalf of the Hall of Fame and motorsport fans from coast to coast, I just want to say thanks. By the way, one of our inductees tonight is celebrating a birthday. Linda, it was really nice that you invited all these people here for Ron's party. Ron Fellows, 39 today. Now, without further delay, I would like to get the ceremonies going by inviting the President and Chairman of the Board of Directors, Dr. Hugh Scully, to come forward.
Well, welcome to all of you, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome in particular to our inductees for 2013 and their families and their friends, many of whom are here. They'll be introduced to you in more detail in a few minutes, and you'll learn a lot more about them. As some of you will observe, as a departure from a more formal dinner and presentation gala that we've had in the past, this is the first time that we've moved to a theater setting in this Glenn Gould studio, famous for many shows and programs with acoustics designed specifically for performance and recording of classical music, with great state-of-the-art technology. This evening, the high notes will be replaced by sounds, as you've already seen, of the engines. We celebrate tonight, too, a series of other firsts. It's the first sellout in recent history. This event was sold out 2 months ago, and that's very encouraging. It's the first magazine-style souvenir program produced by Inside Track with contributions from Dan Proudfoot. It's the first time you were able to order tickets through our website, thanks to our webmaster, Gary Grant. And you'll soon appreciate the real creative talents of Alan Sanders, who produced and directed the program for tonight, and of Tim Miller, who wrote the script for the audiovisual show that we'll enjoy together. On your behalf, and personally, I want to express thanks in particular to Sid Priddle, not known to many, but works very hard behind the scenes, and he's our general manager, who shouldered the major responsibility for organizing this evening, including a great offering in our silent auction and bid often and bid high. Thank you. We'll be reminding you of that during the course of the evening. Working along with many hours with our great volunteer team, Ralph Lucio, Max and Alan Saunders, Cam Newlands, and Bill Davitkoff. They've done an immense amount of work. I'd also like you to recognize the work that's been done by the Board of Directors, quite revised over the last couple of years. In alphabetical order, we have Denis Cadotte, Paul Cook, Tom Dickinson, Ben Doctor, Ralph Lucio, John McGill, Morris McCaig, Duncan McEachern, Jerry Priddle, Mark Rothermel, and Steve Snowden. Several of the directors aren't able to be here. They're off racing this weekend, but they've done a tremendous amount of work, and I will tell you that each has assumed a major area of responsibility, and now at our board meetings, which are recorded on a regular basis, there is an update and a report at each of the meetings, and we have one coming up within a couple of weeks. One of our special guests this evening, whom you'll see a little later, is Joanne Villeneuve. Joanne, nous vous souhaitons une chaleureuse bienvenue à vous et avec votre famille. With great pleasure on behalf of Canada and all present, I extend our welcome to our 2013 International Inductee, Mario Andretti, his wife Deanne, his daughter Barbie, and her husband Giuseppe. More about Mario later, and he'll have, as always, a few words to say. Before turning the evening over to our incomparable Master of Ceremonies, Norris MacDonald, and he really is incomparable, whose day job is being editor of the Wheels section of the Toronto Star, I want to say, as Norris did, a special thank you to Canadian Tire Corporation, the very generous presenting sponsor of our ceremonies this evening. And I'm pleased to introduce you to Mr. Alan MacDonald. That's Mac with an M-A-C, not an M-C. I don't believe, Norris, that you're related. Who is President, Canadian Tire Retail, and invite him to say a few words. Alan, I wonder if you'd come forward and say a few words.
Norris only wishes we were related. Thank you very, very much, Dr. Scully and Norris, for the kind words for Canadian Tire. As a motorsport fan, having the chance to stand up here tonight is an incredible honor. I spent the wee hours of this morning watching a race that happened a week ago, reflecting on how great a day it was going to be in the company of pioneers, people who've committed their lives to bringing racing to Canadians and bringing Canadian racers to the world. It really is an honor, and I want to thank all of you on behalf of Canadian Tire for the privilege of being able to be part of this great event. I'd like to bring our congratulations and the congratulations of the thousands of people across our organization to all the inductees tonight. We're humbled to be in your presence, and we owe you a debt of gratitude for everything that you've given to Canadian race fans. We'd also like to thank the Canadian Motorsport Hall of Fame. It's an incredibly important institution, one that we believe more organizations like ours could get behind. And tonight is hopefully a turning point for us to continue to raise awareness of the Canadian Motorsport Hall of Fame and to take a leadership position in bringing more corporations and more sponsorship to events like tonight. It's incredibly important for Canadians and for racing, and we want to make sure it has a place in all of our hearts and our communities for a long time to come. With that, I'd also be remiss if I didn't say a few words about a near and dear friend who's being inducted tonight, and that's Ron. Ron Fellows and I have seemed to have managed to get every writing machine that was on this podium is now on the floor, so apologies for that. You'll be glad to hear there's fewer things left to drop. So, I got to know Ron over the last few years, and it's no big secret Canadian Tire got involved because Ron is a member of our family. He's an ambassador for our organization. He's a legend in the halls of Canadian Tire, and he's someone that we think of as a real friend. And not to mention myself and my wife Christine personally know Ron and Linda really well, and they've been role models for us, not just as upstanding citizens, but as parents. And I've spent some time at Ron's racing school and learning to drive with him in the passenger seat. Badly, I'll promise you. But I was, in reflecting on this, some of the lessons that Ron has taught me behind the wheel, metaphorically speak to, I think, the role model that he is for me in real life. And I'd like to share some of those with you. He's told me, don't brake too hard or too early. Go easy on the gas, not too much, or you'll just cause your wheels to spin. It's all about balance in the corner. A little bit of brake, a little bit of gas. Have faith. You have more grip than you think. Slow in and fast out. Be brave, but don't be reckless. Take it easy, but race like hell. Be ultra competitive, but play fair. Because winning isn't worth cheating. Be a good loser, because you're going to lose a lot more than you're going to win. And above all, represent yourself, your sponsors, and your family as well as you can. Those are words to live by, not just in racing, but in life, and I think they're lessons probably everybody in this room has witnessed with a lot of our inductees. No one lives those words more than Ron and Linda. There have been great wisdom for us as we raise our little 15-month-old Angus. So we'll be pleased to pass that wisdom along, as I'm sure all of you will. So Ron, Linda, congratulations. Thank you for everything. Congratulations to the rest of inductees on behalf of Canadian Tire.
Thank you, Alan. It's a long story, won't go into it now, but my family's name officially is MAC, so we very well could be related. Before we begin the official induction process, I'd like to acknowledge the presence here tonight of some honorable members who were welcomed to the hall previously, and I would ask them to just come down to the front for everyone to see, and please hold your applause. There's about 10 of them here, starting with one of the great champion road racers of Canadian racing, Bill Brack. A gentleman who, you can stand down there, Brack. You know. Weren't you here for the, no, you weren't here for the rehearsal. That's right. A gentleman who single-handedly started 2 of Canada's iconic racing series and ran about 4 of them, Jack Christie. Jack is here tonight. A racer, a team manager, and a racing executive and administrator, Paul Cook. The first Canadian to qualify for and to race in the Daytona 500 from Montreal, Richard Foley. Where's Dick? Is he coming down? A racer, ambassador, a television star, Scott Goodyear. The last champion of the wonderful Can-Am series, Horst Kroll. A racer and founder, one of the 2 founders of the Hall of Fame, Gary Magwood. A pioneer of motorsport medicine in Canada and internationally, Dr. Hugh Scully. A racer, national driving champion in 1967, Canada's centennial year, and a driving force behind the Hall of Fame, Ross de St. Croix. A racer himself, and a man who then went on to become the king of the Indy Lights owners, Brian Stewart. And a man who raced and was successful in just about any kind of car he got in, whether it was a sports car or a formula car, Epi Wietzes. Now, I should probably ask Brian to say a few words, but I won't. It's okay, Brian. You missed the rehearsal, too. Ladies and gentlemen, members of the Hall of Fame. Thank you. Oh, picture. Brian. Yeah, it's a good idea, Jack, to be looking at the camera. Oh, my goodness. You know, it inevitably happens. Hydroplane champion Mark Rothermel. Who was writing this script tonight? Oh, it was me. Now, while the picture's being taken, I'll just give you a brief rundown of what's going to follow here. The presenters will be asked to come down to the front and join Ralph Lucio at a table beside us. Then each inductee will be honored with a special video. And by the way, the person who narrates the videos, a great contributor to Canadian motorsport, and we will, there we go. So now I'm starting to get stuff into my ears here. In any event, we will carry on. If I could ask Paul Cook, again, Tim Miller, Bob Elliott, Lindsay and Sam Fellows, and Mike Shave to come and join Ralph Lucio at the table at the side of the stage. We will begin our induction ceremony, and the first inductee is Bob Armstrong.
A true competitor and a gentleman in Canadian road racing, this inductee excelled in the sport in a wide variety of classes. Everything from Formula Fords through to a V8-powered Triumph TR8, and he later raced a turbocharged Nissan. While his credentials on the track are exemplary, his biggest influence on the sport was his work behind the scenes. His formative years were spent watching Formula One on the European circuits of the 1960s, witnessing such greats as Dan Gurney, Graham Hill, and Jimmy Clark. Motorcycle racing and sports car endurance racing also influenced him. His vocation was an air traffic controller, but his passion was at the racetrack. In 1969, he became a track marshal at Mosport, now known as Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, and 4 years later was able to start his racing career with Toyota's support in the Canadian Showroom Stock Championship, placing a respectable third in his rookie campaign. In 1974, he ran a Merlin Formula Ford and adapted well to the open-wheel class, taking 9 top 5s in his rookie season. He then raced a Lola T340 while winning the Formula Ford Championship in 1976. For the next 2 years, he raced with his Crosso, a car that helped him win numerous victories and lap records, including a posting at Mosport that stood in the class for the next 20 years. He returned to a full-bodied car in 1980 with a sponsored ride, driving a Sunoco Cam 2 motor oil TR8 with a team that included such luminaries as Scott Goodyear, John Buffum, and Don Pruno. There were some teething problems with the Triumph, sure, but in true style, he persevered and placed fourth in the CASC National Championships. He followed that with the Canadian Molly Slip Endurance Series, a ride in the IMSA GT Series, and more Formula Ford racing. In 1985, he was appointed Chief Steward for the Canadian Pro F2000 Series, working with the CASC and ASN Canada FIA. He was also the head of the Rothmans Porsche Cup, where he officiated racers like Bill Adam, Paul Tracy, and Ron Fellows. In 1990, he took on an important role as Director of Track Safety for Canada's involvement in Formula One, maintaining track safety, fire requirements, and emergency services. In 1997, he was elected a Director and Vice President of the Automobile de Notre Dame, the FIA delegated organizer of the Canadian Grand Prix, where he applied his track coordination and services skills to not only the F1 races, but to the NASCAR events, which came to Circuit Gilles Villeneuve from 2008 through to 2012. He continued to strap on his racing helmet while working behind the scenes, competing in the World Challenge Endurance Series, the Firestone Firehawk Series, and the Honda Michelin Series in the late 1980s and early 1990s, winning races and a few championships as well. He continued to race a full schedule into 2005 with his Nissan, dominating the touring GT class. Along with his on-track activities, our inductee served as director of the Canadian Motorsport Hall of Fame, and as with everything else he did in life, rolled up his sleeves and performed his duties on many projects, working tirelessly with the Hall's induction process and new members. Among the many tributes for our inductee after his passing last April, ASN FIA Canada summed up the man's contributions with this statement: "If there is a royal family of Canadian racing, it is certainly the Armstrongs. On any given weekend, it was not unusual to find Bob the father, Cindy the mother, and Jennifer the daughter at a race event in any number of roles, from track preparation, race car driving, officiating, training, or whatever needed to be done. To know Bob was to respect his wealth of experience, knowledge, and willingness and ability to share with others. More importantly, to know him was to like him. Motorsport in Canada is better because Bob was here." Please welcome to the Canadian Motorsport Hall of Fame, Bob Armstrong.
And accepting on behalf of the late Bob Armstrong is his wife, Cindy Armstrong.
Hello, my name is Bob, and I'm addicted to speed. What a great opening line. Unfortunately, that was as far as Bob got with his acceptance speech before the disease that would eventually take his life made it impossible for him to continue. Bob was a masterful speaker, but I will try to do him proud with my version of what I believe he would have wanted to say. After 44 years of involvement in Canadian racing, there are many people to acknowledge and many lessons learned. There's always a risk when offering acknowledgements that somebody will be forgotten, and if that happens in this case, please accept my humblest apologies in advance. So chronologically, to the best of my remembrance. Thanks to Bob's parents, who were responsible for his becoming hooked on speed. His father, who was posted to Europe from 1960 to 1963, took the family on regular jaunts to see Formula One at Reims, Zandvoort, the Nürburgring, Brussels, Aintree, and Spa-Francorchamps. Bob is one of the few people I know whose fantasy of lapping the Nürburgring came true, albeit with the entire family of 5 and their camping equipment crammed into a VW bus. Still, I'm reasonably certain that this was one of the pivotal moments in his life because it fueled his dream to lap tracks at race speed. A dream that became a reality in 1973 and continued for the rest of his life. Thanks to Dave Washington, a fellow air traffic controller who was Bob's mechanic for all 6 of the seasons that he raced Formula Fords. Together, they won 3 championships in those 6 seasons, a pretty spectacular outcome for 2 amateurs. Thanks to David Berman, who sponsored Bob's racing in 1979, his last Formula Ford season, and who brokered a deal for Bob to race a Formula Atlantic car. Bob and David's paths would cross again when David successfully promoted racing series that Bob officiated for. Thanks to Cam 2, who sponsored Bob's racing of the Factory Triumph TR8 in 1980. It was the end of this season, when British Leyland withdrew from competition, that Bob made a choice not to pursue racing professionally. He was 13 years into a career that he loved and had his family to consider. That decision made, he never had a single regret, but was determined to continue as a privateer. Thanks to Mary Peart, who was the chief steward in Quebec region and saw the lull in Bob's racing as an opportunity to recruit him into the ranks of race officialdom in the early 1980s. That was the start of an astonishing symbiotic relationship between Bob the racer and Bob the race official over the next 30-odd seasons. Thanks to Jack Christie, who recruited Bob to be chief steward of the two series that he promoted. Jack also brokered a deal with Nissan Canada in 1991 for Bob to run one of their cars in the Canadian Endurance Racing Championships. Bob's last race in that car was on September 30th, 2012. He put over 58,000 racing kilometers on that chassis. Thanks to Paul Cook, who recruited Bob to be chief steward of the ASN Professional Series, and in 1990 installed him as director of safety at the Canadian Grand Prix. It was through this latter action that Bob would gain expertise and come to be recognized and valued by the international racing community, FIA, Champ Car, NASCAR, Grand Am, and IRL. Thanks to the late Ted Powell, who spent over a decade doing everything under the sun to support Bob's racing efforts. Thanks to Hank Franzak and Chris By, who recruited Bob to provide training for automotive manufacturers and thereby gave him the means to continue racing. Thanks to the Automobile Club de Lyon Notre Dame, the organizers of the Canadian Grand Prix, who recognized Bob's expertise and rewarded his loyalty by inviting him to be a member of the board of directors in 1997. Thanks to Francois Dumontier, the promoter of the Canadian Grand Prix and the Edmonton Indy, who deferred to Bob's expertise and made him the go-to guy for safety-related issues. Thanks to the newly formed Canadian Medical Rescue Team, who sought out Bob's expertise to assist in formulating their mandate. This is a group of individuals who honor Bob's memory at every event as they continually add equipment, actively seek out new methods, and continuously train to respond to on-track incidents, all to better protect competitors. Thanks to all of the other drivers who trusted him with their equipment, 21 by my count. Thanks to the multitude of volunteers from all disciplines who worked tirelessly to keep him safe and who helped him keep other drivers safe, and many of whom became friends in the process. Thanks to Doug and Leslie Allingham, who have officiated with us, raced with us, crewed for us, opened their home to us, and been there supporting us for over a quarter of a century. Thanks to our stalwart crew, all volunteers who have given freely of their time and expertise. Glenn Foote, who has been with us since 1995, Chris Harper and David Garretts, who have been with us since 2000, and Chris Haley, who has been with us since 2003. They have become part of our family. And last, but certainly not least, thanks to our beloved family, who have been the greatest support and who are the greatest legacy. We are a racing family. We co-drive with each other. We crew for each other. We officiate with each other. In fact, Jennifer and I will be on the start bridge at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park tomorrow afternoon to give the checkered flag on the last two GT Sprint races of the season. And we are training the next generation of racers with 4 of our grandchildren already karting. I know that after many thousands of kilometers and thousands of hours devoted to racing and officiating, Bob wanted to pass along a few lessons that were learned and from which others might benefit. If the gas cap is left off the fuel filler neck of your Formula Ford, causing the cockpit of your car to be awash in fuel by the end of the race, you might pass out and come to without any clothes on. If your co-driver is 8 inches taller than you, you should always move the seat back so he can get into the car without serious injury. When racing in a showroom stock class, you should always ensure that your spouse drives the same car model on the road so you have a ready source of parts, like transmissions and engines. It is best to source those parts when your spouse is sleeping or away from home. Don't hydrate with 3 bottles of Gatorade immediately before a 3-hour stint in the car. Don't leave the jack handle in the horizontal position during the pit stop, especially when your crew chief is 75 years old. If you are racing at the Molson Indy and the ignition won't turn the car off, you can always stall it. If you've been stalling your car to turn it off and then the transmission breaks, you can always have the Vice President of ASN Canada FIA borrow a wrench from the IndyCar team to disconnect the battery. Sorry, Paul. If you need to learn how to patch pavement, you get lessons from the President of ASN Canada FIA. Don't make offhand wisecracks just before the start of a big race without ascertaining whether the clerk of the course has just taken a large swig of coffee. And always torque the wheels on your wife's car. But returning to the business at hand, thank you to the honorable members of the Canadian Motorsports Hall of Fame for this honor. Bob was extremely pleased and very grateful to have the value of his contributions to Canadian motorsport recognized. And finally, all of the Armstrongs would like to offer our most sincere congratulations to all of this year's other inductees. We know how much effort it takes to excel within the motorsport world, where the bar is set very high to begin with. Thank you.
This is not quite finished, Cindy. There's another legacy that carries on from Bob, a person I had a great love for and a great respect. Cindy is now Deputy Clerk of the Course for the Formula One race in Montreal and does an excellent job.
Thank you, Cindy and Paul. I meant, before I got a little mixed up there a few moments ago, to credit the person who's narrating the videos tonight, and that, of course, is Raceline Radio's Eric Thomas. Thank you very much, Eric. And our next inductee is Jimmy Carr.
One of the most influential people in Tony Stewart's sprint car career is a quiet former drag racer from Canada's West Coast who would rather succeed in his role behind the scenes than boast of the organization's immense success. From the bull rings of British Columbia, our next inductee entered the world of sprint car racing, spending more time running up and down the highway than he did on the actual dirt ovals in Washington, Oregon, and California. But by 1990, he was ready to take a shot at full-time racing in the World of Outlaws series. He became a quick study, taking Rookie of the Year honors with the Outlaws, placing 8th in 1991, but the following season an injury slowed his progress to become a regular on the sport's toughest circuit, racing well over 90 times a season, crisscrossing North America. After several years on the tour, though, he found his niche in another role, turning wrenches for Outlaws champion Danny Lasowski in between driving assignments in the mighty 900 horsepower, alcohol-fueled, 1,100-pound winged monsters in 1998. Through Lasowski, our inductee met up with Tony Stewart at the Chili Bowl, who at the time was competing in the Indy Racing League just before Smoke embarked on his successful championship NASCAR Cup career. Stewart, who always wanted to get into sprint car racing, along with our inductee and Lasowski, planned and prepared an outlaw team for the future Cup superstar in 1999 from the ground up. While building the team in 2000, he competed in random races, testing and developing parts and components that the team would use in their upcoming debut season. From 2001, when our inductee and Lasowski made Stewart a World of Outlaws champion owner in his first season until today, he has been a crew chief or in a management role, helping to build Tony Stewart Racing into one of the World of Outlaws' dominant racing teams. He's also been vital, helping TSR succeed in other dirt racing venues, such as winning several USAC National Sprint Car and Silver Crown titles and the prestigious Knoxville Nationals with driver Donnie Schatz. Our inductee also played a dominant role in Stewart's success behind the wheel of a sprint car himself, where the team has double-digit victories, including 2 Outlaws wins in the last 3 seasons at Ohsweken Speedway nearby, just south of Hamilton, when the Outlaws make their annual appearance at the wide and very fast Clay Oval. At present, our inductee manages no less than 5 teams out of Brownsburg, Indiana, but he says winning in Canada as part of Stewart's effort has made him especially proud. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome into the Canadian Motorsport Hall of Fame, Jimmy Carr.
Now, Jimmy, we've got a little treat for you. Hold everything. Jimmy, before you start talking, we have another special little surprise, another video to show.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's a special night for not only all the inductees, but everyone in attendance tonight. I wish I could have been there tonight to see my great friend Jimmy Carr earn this honor and to celebrate with him. Being inducted into the Canadian Motorsports Hall of Fame is a tremendous honor, and I'm very proud to have Jimmy as a part of my organization. He's been an instrumental part of Tony Stewart Racing since its inception in 2001 and helped us build something that I'm very, very proud of. Not only has he helped us win numerous World of Outlaw and USAC championships, but he's helped me go through my learning curve as a wing sprint car driver. My first career Outlaws win came in Canada at Ohsweken a few years ago, and I'm proud that I was able to do it with Jimmy. So congratulations on your induction into the Canadian Motorsports Hall of Fame. I'm truly honored to call you not only my crew chief, but also my friend.
I wasn't ready for that. I'd like to thank everybody for being here, but I don't know why I'm so ate up with that. I don't know. Sorry. But everybody involved, all the sponsors that put this on for us, I don't know where all the money comes to hold this event. Very, very appreciative, very humbled and honored to be a part of it. Thank you very much.
Our next inductees are John and Sharon Fletcher.
From Hamilton, Ontario, this family ran a successful automotive speed shop, but selling customers high-performance parts just wasn't enough. In 1982, they decided to buy a drag strip and through perseverance and hard work, revitalized Dragway Park just outside of Cayuga, Ontario. Purchasing the facility from bankruptcy trustees, the Fletchers had their work cut out for them as a great deal of equipment was missing, including the all-important quarter-mile timing clocks and electronics. Also missing was the trust from the drag racing community, which had a bad experience from the former owners. This trust had to be reestablished and reestablished quickly. But our inductees and the rest of the family not only built the former Dragway Park drag strip back to a viable facility, they also fostered and received support from the racers, fans, and sponsors. They also expanded the operation and welcomed in some new classes of drag racing machinery that were becoming popular at the time, as well as maintaining a solid foundation with regular local racers. With the sponsorship of the Becker's Milk Company, our inductees introduced such classes as Pro Modified and Super Gas at the track in the late 1980s and hosted the first Canadian national event under the sanctioning of the International Hot Rod Association, a sanctioning body that would visit the facility several times over the years. After these accomplishments, our inductees were presented with an offer to sell Cayuga they couldn't refuse, and they departed Canada's oldest drag strip in operation since 1954 in solid shape. But instead of taking the money and retiring, they purchased yet another historic drag strip about 80 miles west along Highway 3 from Cayuga, St. Thomas Dragway in Sparta, Ontario, developed in 1962 by the Harvey family. It had long been an NHRA track and the home of some of the biggest events in the country. With some spit and polish and modernized equipment, St. Thomas returned to its former glory under the work and guidance of our inductees, who continued to operate the track under the NHRA banner under the name of London Motorsports Park in the late 80s and early 90s. One of their most noted endeavors at London Motorsports Park was to bring in the biggest name in drag racing, 15-time NHRA Nitro Funny Car champ John Force, who wowed the fans 3 times with his 8,000 horsepower fire-belching flopper in match races. Our inductees have stepped away from the day-to-day operations at St. Thomas, but their positive management and development of the track is well noted. To take not one, but 2 ailing drag racing facilities and return them to a viable place for competitors and fans of the sport in this country is to be highly commended. And for their efforts, we welcome Sharon and John Fletcher to the Canadian Motorsport Hall of Fame.
Well, thank everybody that helped us get to this point, and I mean the people who helped get our nomination and get us into this wonderful establishment. We've been proud to beat at a lot of the, as other people we know have been inducted, and we are really honored to be part of this. And, you know, we're just the people that were up front that were lucky enough to own the facilities and have the race cars. You know, we went through life with so many support of family and friends and the sponsors. You know, Canadian Tire coming here and helping out is really a big thing for this, and we need the corporations like them to stand behind it and make these things happen. And I'm sure in the future, I mean, originally with Castrol, we worked with them for years, and they were the founding patron, I think, of the hall. And they've made our life pretty good because, you know, they supplied the funds and stuff for us to do what we wanted to do and the racers to do what they wanted to do all those years. And it's, you know, it was a great life for all of us. And we're very happy that our family stood behind us and our friends and our workers. Bob, who's here, you know, he was our longtime track announcer, and he did the speeches for me whenever I had to do anything, or my brother Danny did, who was also there all the time. So we didn't have to do the speeches. And so, as you've already found out, that's not our great success part of life, was doing speeches. But we were happy to do what we did and support the drag racing that we all loved. And you know, we've been involved in other forms of motorsports as spectators and fans, but drag racing was what we done in most of our life, since we were young to now that we're old. So we really, really appreciate everything, and people from the Hall of Fame for all they've done, and we're very, very honored. And thank you very much.
And I just wanted to say a few words. We are very humbled, and we had a great journey. It's been a wonderful life, and I would like to thank all our family, because they were there in the good times and they were there in the bad times, which if you run a racetrack, you're going to know that there's lots of both. And we're just very honored to have such wonderful friends that stuck beside us all the time as well. And also our faith. Our faith got us through everything when we started, when we were first married and we had nothing, and all the way through into our wonderful life. And I just want to thank everybody. I want to thank the Motorsports Hall of Fame for this wonderful honor, and we thank you all.
Our next inductee is Ron Fellows.
In 1969, as a young boy, this inductee attended the Formula One Canadian Grand Prix at Mosport with his uncle and his brother, and the experience was life-changing. The sounds, the smells, the excitement ignited the passion that started the dream to become a race car driver. This son of an Anglican minister was born in Windsor, raised in Sarnia and Port Huron, Michigan, and then moved to Brampton, where he started karting at the age of 15. He advanced to Formula 2000 quickly, racing a Datsun 510 in his early career, and then competed in the Players GM Series, where he won 10 events and the championship in 1989. He became a dominant player in the SCCA Trans Am Series from 1987 to 1996, driving for the legendary Jack Roush and for Tom Gloy Racing. He finished in Trans Am with American Equipment Racing as a GM factory driver, and his famous teammates included the likes of Paul Newman and NFL running back Walter Payton. In 1997, driving a Ferrari 333 SP, he put the car on the pole and won at Mosport in the World Sports Car Series in what was the first professional win for Ferrari in Canada since 1964. It was also in 1997 that GM racing boss Herb Fischel beckoned our inductee to Detroit, where he was asked to take the role as lead driver for GM Racing to take Corvette to Daytona and Le Mans. As the lone Canadian and lead driver for this iconic brand, his career at Corvette Racing with Pratt & Miller included 28 victories, 3 championships, and the most popular driver no less than 4 times. He recorded 2 class wins at the legendary 24 Hours of Le Mans, but it was his overall win at the 24 Hours of Daytona which set a benchmark in Canadian motorsport as the only Canadian in the history of this event to win overall. Along with his win, highlights at Daytona included working with teammates Dale Earnhardt Sr. and Jr. driving the team's sister car, and his Rolex watch grand prize being presented to him by Formula One legend Sir Jackie Stewart. Marking his distinguished tenure with Corvette Racing in 2007, GM produced 399 limited edition ALMS GT1 Champion Corvette Z06 models. It was the first ever signed edition in Corvette's history. It was painted Arctic white and featured a fender stripe in red with his signature and a maple leaf motif saluting his Canadian heritage. Our inductee continued to show his versatility. He did the early testing and development of the Cadillac LMP program for GM Racing. He also raced in NASCAR Sprint Cup Nationwide and Truck Series. He has 2 Truck Series wins to his credit and 4 Nationwide Series victories, and is one of only 3 drivers to win 2 Nationwide Series races in their first 4 starts. The others, Dale Earnhardt Sr. and Darrell Waltrip. He was the first non-American to win a NASCAR nationwide race. His win in Montreal in 2008, driving the GoDaddy Monte Carlo for Dale Earnhardt Jr., was a highlight, but it was also historic. It was the first NASCAR points race ever to be run and won in the rain. Our inductee also made his mark in NASCAR's Premier Series with 2 second-place finishes in Sprint Cup to Jeff Gordon and Tony Stewart, both champions, and both races at Watkins Glen. His racing DNA includes karting where it all started, and he's never forgotten his roots. So in 2002, he created the Sunoco Karting Championship in his name, which over 6 seasons became the most important young driver development racing series in North America, bringing Canadian talent to the world stage. In 2011, he again helped further young Canadian karting talent, bringing Canadian Tire on board with the ASN Canada FIA Canadian Karting Championship, supporting young Canadians at home and around the world with Rotax Team Canada. Through the years, he's been blessed with the love and support from his wife Linda and his children Lindsay, Sam, and Patrick. Today, Sam spots for his dad at NASCAR events and works in the media center at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park that once again became a huge part of our inductee's life and career. In June of 2011, he partnered with Carlo Fadani in the purchase of Mosport, now rebadged Canadian Tire Motorsport Park. Together, they have reinvigorated this iconic Canadian venue and brought his dream full circle with the awarding of a recent NASCAR Truck Series race played before crowds reminiscent of the glory days of the 1960s. Tonight, we honor not only one of Canada's top auto racers, but one of this nation's most prominent racing ambassadors who just happens to be one of the nicest people you could ever know. Every Canadian should be proud as we induct into the Canadian Motorsport Hall of Fame a man who has accomplished so much on an international level for our sport. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the Canadian Motorsport Hall of Fame, the incomparable Ron Fellows.
Didn't expect that. Yeah, Jimmy, I'm joining you in shedding tears here. Thank you very, very much. This is indeed an honor. Obviously, just for all of us as inductees and a little overwhelming. Really fortunate to have a lot of family and close friends here tonight. Congratulations to all the inductees. This is a very, very cool deal. I want to say in particular, I want to say a few words about Bob Armstrong. Cindy, when I first got into Formula Ford in '77, Bob and his badass Crosley were the ones to beat. And then in the sport for this country, Bob would be known as a difference maker. So you should all be proud. Thank you. How cool is it to be on the itinerary with Mario Andretti? In my humble opinion, the greatest ever. This gentleman won in everything. And that we were actually chatting earlier, that little shot of the Ferrari 333, I was actually looking at lap times, and Mario was faster than I was in the 333 20 years earlier in his Formula One car. 20 years earlier was still faster. You know, in reflecting this week with my wife Linda, one of the things that really stands out is the people. You know, it's not about not necessarily about races and winning. It's really been about the people, and in a series of career-altering moments, really fed by my uncle Charles McLaren, my mom's brother. He was the enabler. He took my brother and I to the '69 Canadian Grand Prix, and that was it. Really wanted to get on the other side of the fence. And my brother Rob and I were nuts about car racing, and crazy enough to go to the Shoppers World Cinema in Brampton 6 nights in a row to watch the Steve McQueen movie Le Mans. And guess what? It was a double feature. And guess what the double feature was? You never guess. Cheyenne Social Club with James Stewart and Henry Fonda. Just in case I had forgotten. You know, the years that you know, trying to make a career, it certainly wasn't easy. I've been really fortunate to have people who believed in me, shared the incredible passion, and helped me to live my dream of becoming a professional racing driver. There were years where I had to give up the dream. I spent nearly 10 years working on a natural gas pipeline in the Peel region. And much to the anxiety of my parents, I didn't really have a backup plan. But I thought I'd just thank a few people here. First, I want to thank my mother. My dad's no longer with us, but my mother's here. And I want to thank her for her incredible patience. Likely a bit of a difficult son who wanted to race cars. She spent a good part of her time deflecting calls from creditors when I had amassed a little too much debt in Formula Ford. All the debts were paid, thank you. It just took a while. And I think my mother would attest that the years that I was busy paying off debts, I was just miserable. Along came a series, Players GM Series, 1986, the brainchild of Marty Shenhall, an engineer at GM. The series provided series prize money, and it had national TV. And the best part was, you got to drive the car to the track. And I had this showroom stock Camaro, and sure enough, at the very first race, there was myself and 75 others. But the great thing about the Players GM Series was the valuable lessons I learned, not only how to race, but how to do a little bit of marketing. And winning the Santa Ana race in '86, actually the guy who I also need to thank, Richard Spinard, he got me off the pipeline working at his racing school and helped me get into the Players GM Series. But I'll never forget him jumping in the window, Ronnie, $5,000 for racing a showroom stock Camaro. It was awesome. I also want to thank Brad Brown. Brad, when working at Richard's school, Brad came to the school, and pretty neat. He managed to recognize my proposal in his stack of proposals in his advertising agency, and convinced Tom Riley and Brian McInerney that Sunoco should sponsor my brother and I. And we managed to do that. We managed to have Sunoco until the series ended. Another altering moment, career-altering moment, Jim O'Donnell. Jim was president and co-founder of McKinsey Financial. We met through the Players GM Series, and then I knew he was maybe interested in sponsoring me. And the first race of 1988, I put McKenzie on the car and managed to get the pole. And Jim came by and saw the signage and said, "So Ron, how much is that going to cost me?" So that was the start of a relationship with Jim that went on to this day. Jim was a great influence for me, and not only did he feel that I was worthy of support from McKenzie, but I met a beautiful girl who worked at McKinsey Financial, Lynn Stewart, who became my wife. So it's a good deal all around. To this day, Jim and I share season tickets with the Maple Leafs. Not many playoff games, unfortunately, but Jim is on his way back from Italy, and did leave you a voicemail today, but a great friend and supporter. Also, through the Players GM Series, I met a guy who was a pretty good driver, who got really smart and decided to own a GM dealership instead on Vancouver Island. Peter Balget and his wife Dawn are here. Thank you for coming. Peter's been a great friend over the years, great sounding board for helping me with my career, contracts, and otherwise. He's been a great help, and he sponsored our GM team, and the crazy son of a gun actually sponsored I raced a Porsche Turbo Cup car at Vancouver, Indy, and there I was on the pole with this Chevy bow tie in the back window of this Porsche, heartbeat of Duncan. You know, one of the things that Jim O'Donnell did for me as a reward for winning the Players GM Championship was sponsoring me in a few Trans Am races, and I managed to hook up with Jack Roush, and we managed to win a race in 4 or 5 starts, which is never a guarantee of future employment, particularly with Jack. In 1990, I actually was begging Jack for a ride, and was at the very first race in Phoenix and begged him for a ride. And he said, you know, I might have something for you. It might not be for the whole season, but there's a company in Texas called AER Manufacturing, and they've been sponsoring some of our stuff. And the owner is Bob McGraw, and he and his wife Helen are really nice people. If they like you, they might stick with you. Well, Bob and Helen McGraw are here tonight from Dallas, Texas. "23 years later, AER has been a fixture on cars I have raced, and their logo is permanently on my helmet and gloves. And we did the tally the other day, a total of 61 races over the years with AER Manufacturing as a sponsor. From sports cars to NASCAR, been incredible supporter, great friends, godparents, you name it. You won't find a more caring and giving couple. And to this day in our household, when things become difficult or whatever, I often say to myself, what would Bob do? What would Helen do? Great mentors for us. In the another altering moment, the Detroit Grand Prix Trans Am race back in the 90s, it was a big deal, the Trans Am race, especially in Detroit when you had factory teams from Chevy, Dodge, and Ford. And in '94, I managed to win the Chevy 150 in Detroit in a Ford Mustang. And on the podium, Herb Fischel, who was head of GM Racing then, Herb has this slow Virginia drawl, and he handed me the trophy, and basically out of the side of his mouth says to me, "Congratulations, Ron, how do we get you in a Chevrolet?" And I said, all you got to do is call. Oddly enough, we were later that summer, that was June of '94, later that summer, we were actually had a brief vacation with the family at Peter and Don's place on Vancouver Island. And our good friend, the late Earl Dickinson from GM in Canada, called and said, "You are summoned to Detroit to visit with Herb." Anyway, we managed to get a Chevy deal and have been there ever since. And I will say that my first contract for Chevy was negotiated by none other than Jack Christie. Thank you, Jack. Jack with his, he had some Ford stuff. And I remember meeting with Herb, and after that, and we did the deal, and the good news for Herb was I managed to win the Detroit Trans Am race there the next year in a Chevy. So good for Herb. My foray into NASCAR, it was, I got to thank Billy Hess. Billy was a character. We got into the truck series. You saw some of the pictures there. Billy, a big guy, and when we won our first truck race at the Glen, it was before real pit stops, so they had the 5-minute break where the driver actually had to get out and help. So they had essentially did tires and fuel at this halfway break. Well, we managed to win it, and I remember being on the podium, and we had an interesting crew, and Billy just kind of looked over and said, "Not bad for a drunk, a parolee, a deaf mute, and a big old Canuck." I'll say that in '97, getting that first NASCAR win in the truck series really was what led to future employment in NASCAR, particularly for road races, and I thank Billy for that, and also again AER. Getting the opportunity to race for Joe Nemechek and driving with Brian Patty, but there's no more of a no more important win than for me in the Nationwide Series than winning at Circuit Gilles Villeneuve in 2008. And Joanne is here. Thank you for coming. The next meeting I had with Herb was when he talked about the Corvette program. And I met with Herb at the fall of '97. My contract was up, and they'd pulled out of the Trans Am Series, And of course, we just bought a house. And at that time, in the late 90s, sports car racing was in a real state of flux. And he told me about this plan to go race a Corvette. We were going to go to Le Mans. And he asked me if I'd like to be part of that. And I thought about it for a nanosecond. I'm in. And certainly, the winning at Le Mans and the overall win at Daytona. The Daytona win was very special. Getting to meet the Earnhardts led to an opportunity to not only drive for senior, but for Dale Jr. In driving for DEI, it was when we won the 24-hour. Tragically, Dale was killed a few weeks later, but it was exactly 2 years later when Ty Norris called me and said, "We've got an opportunity for you to drive for DEI. We know Senior really wanted you to drive for him one day." And he actually had spent, when we were at the Rolex 24, he spent more time trying to talk my wife into it than me. But they had not forgotten that that was something that he wanted to have happen. And we finished second a couple of times in DEI cars, but didn't win. And for that, I'm sorry. But we did manage to win one for Dale Jr., so that's pretty neat. In the transition from 2008 was my last Le Mans, and transitioning into racing businessman, I guess. The karting series. Paul Cook, I hope I have your energy when I'm your age. That's all I can say. Paul is a gentleman and a great inspiration. We actually met at the Players GM race in 1989, where he promptly fined me $5,000. It's a popular number for an on-track incident. Oddly, we become friends after that. But the karting has been a great fun, and I think what we see today is the work that Paul and Tom Riley with Sunoco has done, and it's continued to this day with the support of Canadian Tire. Along the way, we had the school, our friends with Chevrolet and Michelin, been fantastic to deal with, and Canadian Tire, just an awesome deal. Again, the people that have become friends and great friends. Stephen Wetmore introduced me to Alan McDonald, and we hit it off. And Alan is fortunately a big motorsports fan. And Alan, thank you for your continuing and growing support for the sport. Alan's here with his wife Christine, and not only does he support my limited NASCAR schedule, but he has a soft spot and is big on the karting, and for our next generation of drivers at the national and international level. He really believes in what we do, and also with the racetrack. And which leads me into my partner at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, Carlo Fidani. We met through a mutual friend at my school, oddly enough, and started talking about, I don't know if it was our second or third trip there, but talked about buying a track. And so we were talking about, what about Mosport? And I said, well, I don't think it's for sale, but I know who to call. The rest is kind of history. Carlo is a terrific guy, a great visionary, and has been a big part of the creation of the upgrade for this great iconic motorsports facility. And our great staff with Miles Brandt at the helm. Miles is here. Carlo, I want to thank you for the opportunity to be part of something that's meant so much to me, that racetrack. So thank you. Which brings me to my most important partner, my wife, Linda. Thank you for believing. Thank you for your love and your friendship. It's been an incredible journey so far. We have 3 terrific kids who have schlepped all over North America and Europe, from the Knights Inn to the Four Seasons and the Ritz. Hell, both Lindsay and Sam have sung the Canadian National Anthem at the Watkins Glen Sprint Cup races. Our youngest son, Patrick, could not be here. He's in a hockey tournament as he pursues a career in hockey. But I just want to again say thank you. This has been This has been a true honor and a privilege to be part of this group, and thank you.
Ron, could you stay on the stage for just a moment, please? Ron and Michelin Tires have enjoyed a long and successful relationship.
I'm not wrestling.
There we go. Anyway, in recognition of their partnership and Ron's induction here tonight, our Sachin Despinay and Public Relations Manager for Michelin Canada, and a man who needs no introduction, Bib, the Michelin Man. And there's a plaque, and now there's a check. They're making a donation on your behalf and Linda's to a cause that we know has a special meaning to both of you, the Burns and Plastic Surgery Department at Toronto's Hospital for Sick Children. Our next inductee is Stompin Tom Walters.
This competitor has been racing on Southern Ontario short tracks for over 40 years. His approach to oval track racing has so far carried him to a total of 30 division championships, and he continues building on this legacy in 2013. He didn't get into racing through the normal channels of family or friends. After a neighbor invited him to watch him race at Sunset Speedway in 1970, the neighbor told our inductee he'd had enough after 3 straight rainouts and his race car was for sale. Well, he bought the car, won a race that season, and found out he enjoyed the sport and was pretty darn good at it, competing up to 3 times a week over the next several years on the bull rings of Sunset, Wasaga Beach, and Sutton. During this time, he developed friendships and track rivalries while running against people like Tommy Milligan, Hall of Famer Don Biederman, and Doug Warrens. In 1979, he hit the track with his first new car, a Camaro late model put together by noted car builder Jim Ward. By 1990, our inductee had certainly found his way around an oval. He won the Sunset Late Model Championship every year from 1990 through 1998. He also won the Molson Export Super Series title in 91 and 92, along with a 93 Goodyear Challenge Cup and a couple of championships in the All-Star Series. He continued his success going into the new century with titles in the Lucas Oil Series, as well as championships at both Barrie and Kawartha Speedways. In 2010, he raced 3 different cars and more titles at Sunset and the touring McCall Racing Series. And now, after more than 4 decades of weekly racing, our inductee continues to rack up the wins. Showing no signs of lifting his foot to slow down at all, the Bradford, Ontario native picked up yet another win earlier this season at Sunset in his Mustang-bodied late model in typical fashion against younger, strong competitors like Billy Zardo, Andy Camrath, and Jason Whitty. When not competing, he's heavily involved in programs to help special needs athletes the opportunity to stay active and socialize in the community, working with such groups as the Ontario South Simcoe Special Olympic Athletes and Project Track Champion. A passionate individual about his racing, he is thankful for the dedication of family, friends, and sponsors who have allowed him to race over the decades, and plans on continuing to race as long as possible as we induct into the Canadian Motorsport Hall of Fame, Tom Walters.
I want to thank everybody here that attended. Not much for speaking into these things at all. I've had a great, I don't call it a career, I never made any money at it, that's for sure. I've sure spent a lot, but I haven't made a lot. And as you all know, being involved in racing, you got to have a passion. And that's what I call it. I call it a passion. It's been my life. It's been my family. Everybody that supported me over the 40 years I've been doing this, and that still support me today as I continue to race every Saturday night still. We have a race tomorrow, as a matter of fact, when we leave here. So we qualified this afternoon. So we're still pretty active, and I really appreciate it. I want to thank Canadian Tire for supporting this. I didn't know much about the Canadian Hall of Fame until people started sending in stuff on my behalf, which I really appreciate. And I got on the internet and I started meeting more people about it, and it's a great honor to be here. It really is. I mean, I'm just a small guy in a big pond, and I just do it because I love it. I love it, and I want to thank, like I said, all the people that support me and all the people that are here, especially my wife and my family. My two daughters are here tonight. I know they've actually put a lot behind to support me in racing and still come every Saturday night. It's still a family thing. And the guys that help me are all young. They keep me young, and they keep me going. And everybody that loves motorsports understands where I'm coming from with this. Thank you very much, and have a great evening.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, we have a very special guest with us tonight. Gilles Villeneuve was probably the fastest racing driver who ever lived, and it's our pleasure to have his wife, Joanne Villeneuve, with us tonight. Would you welcome her to the stage, please? Welcome to Toronto.
Thank you for having me.
You had a bit of a tough time getting here, though. On Thursday, you were in the south of France.
I was in the south of France. I almost didn't make it here. There were tons of problems. Arrived late for the first flight. Then in Frankfurt, the first plane was canceled. Second plane was too small. And then they finally got a third plane in. And they got everybody on so I could get here, yeah.
Well, it's wonderful to have you here. And you have your daughter, Melanie, with you?
I have my daughter, my wonderful daughter, Melanie, yeah.
And Jacques is in Switzerland with his family?
Well, Jacques is in Andorra with his family because he's now commentating for the French TV and Italian TV. So he's off to every single Formula One race every other weekend. So it was just too difficult for him to come over.
Maybe next year.
Maybe, maybe next year.
Now, I'm going to talk to you for a few minutes about your husband. We all know the stories about Gilles. Some of them are true, and some of them are maybe a little exaggerated. And maybe you might set the record straight on a couple of them here tonight. For example...
well, Mario knows a few of them also.
I'm sure. Professor Sid Watkins, the late Professor Watkins, great friend of the president of the Hall of Fame, Dr. Scully. Professor, in his autobiography, tells the story of driving through the streets of Sao Paulo, and he says that it was the most hair-raising experience of his life, that Jacques was wilder on the streets of the city than he was on the racetrack, and he turned around to say something to you, and you were on the floor. Now, is this true?
No, I'm going to correct that one. I was always sitting in the front, first of all. My place was co-pilot. And the other part of it is true, though. Everyone that got in the car with us, especially in Brazil, never wanted to get in a car with him ever again. So I guess I was the only one that just went through it every time.
Well, I was going to say, you know, Nigel Roebuck tells the story of Gilles driving you to Bologna, which is a distance of whatever, but it usually takes about 4.5 hours from Monaco to Bologna. And of course, you did it in 2 hours.
2.5 hours.
2.5 hours.
Yeah, door to door.
Now, you were a little nervous this
No,
time?
I was sleeping.
And this is because he always drove like that.
I thought everyone drove like that until I realized that, no, not everyone does. So I thought I couldn't drive because I thought everyone drove like that, and I knew there was no ways on earth I could do that. So,
well, he did scare you once now. You told me a story once when we had a delightful conversation about him wanting to test the autopilot on the helicopter.
Yes.
Maybe you can tell us about
that. That was the scariest experience of my life, where in the south of France, they have these big windstorms, and he decided to test the autopilot on the helicopter he had just bought. So he just put the autopilot on, and I could see everything going every which way, the pedals, everything, and the helicopter was like a leaf in the wind. And that's the one time in your life where you can't say, stop, I'm getting out. You just have to sit there and wait.
Now, you know that he had the... Oh, by the way, have you seen the movie Rush yet?
Not yet, no.
Because, of course, you know, the whole story of Gilles Villeneuve going to Formula One started when he beat James Hunt at Trois Rivières.
Yes, exactly.
And James went back to Britain and extolled the virtues of this young Canadian, and that's what took him to McLaren.
Yep.
But then, all of a sudden, that deal ended.
Yes.
And the phone rings, and it's Enzo Ferrari.
Yeah.
Now, how surprised were you when the voice on the phone said it was Ferrari calling?
We thought it was a joke. We never thought that Ferrari would call. And it turned out to not be a joke, and it was a very serious thing. And they had him go over to Italy. He tried the car, and they really wanted him. But Mr. Ferrari had seen him race in Silverstone, and that's when he wanted him for Ferrari.
Well, it's delightful. You know, thank you so much for coming here tonight. I'm sorry we can't take longer, but we still have some business to attend to tonight.
Yes.
Will you come back?
Yes.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, Joanne Villeneuve. I would ask Dr. Scully to return to the stage to induct our international honoree. Mario Andretti.
He could drive the wheels off anything he raced. He was adept and comfortable in race cars with and without fenders. He won a Formula One Grand Prix championship. He won the Daytona 500. He won the Indianapolis 500. And even though his racing career stretched over 5 decades since coming to North America from his native Italy, this international inductee still has the passion and competitive nature to suit up and get into a race car at any time. After the family settled into their Nazareth, Pennsylvania home back in 1955, our inductee and his twin brother Aldo already had racing on their minds after witnessing the Italian Grand Prix in Monza just before gathering up and heading to North America. Outside of Nazareth was a half-mile dirt oval. The brothers built and started racing a 1948 Hudson Hornet in 1959. By 1964, this future superstar was racing on the USAC Sprint Cup circuit as well as driving a midget in the eastern states. In fact, his first of many visits to Canada was during a USAC midget race held at the famed CNE Oval in Toronto. In 1965, he won his first IndyCar race and placed third in the Indianapolis 500 that year, along with a championship at age 25, the youngest driver ever to do so. The next year in 1966, he once again dominated the Champ Car Trail, winning 8 races and his second straight championship. For 1967, our inductee had a stellar campaign. He won NASCAR's Daytona 500, his first of 3 12 hours of Sebring, and finished second in Champ Car points. He was able to get into a Formula One car that same year, qualifying for the pole in his first race, the U.S. Grand Prix at Watkins Glen, but he was forced to the sidelines with mechanical problems. Our inductee returned to IndyCar racing in 1969. He won the Indy 500, leading 116 laps at the Brickyard. He won 9 events that year, going on to win his 3rd IndyCar championship. His success continued in the early 70s. He won at Sebring, and driving for Ferrari, won his first Grand Prix in South Africa in 1971. Working with the great Colin Chapman in Lotus, our inductee went back to Formula One in 1976, winning races around the globe. And his efforts all came together in 1978 when he won the Formula One World Driving Championship, the first driver in history to win both the Formula One and IndyCar championships. He continued to race F1 in the 1980s, but returned to IndyCar racing, winning that championship once again in 1984. Throughout the decade, he was a dominant player in the series, and after winning his 51st IndyCar race in 1988, concentrated on the historic first father and son team with his son Michael, already a Canadian Motorsport Hall of Famer, as they raced together for the very first time. In 1993, our inductee set another benchmark, winning his 52nd IndyCar race, making him the first driver to win IndyCar events over 4 decades and the first to win races over 5 decades, a truly amazing accomplishment. In 1994, our inductee decided it would be his last year of active competition. His Arrivederci Mario Tour was a season-long celebration that was well received by his legions of fans and fellow racers around the world. Today, he continues in the mainstream of motorsport, working with several companies and associations as a spokesperson and associate. He continues to be totally involved in the sport while maintaining other interests like water skiing, flying his ultralight airplane, and his superb winery. Ladies and gentlemen, we are extremely privileged and proud to induct into the Canadian Motorsport Hall of Fame Mario Andretti.
Like everyone said before me, this is really awesome. Thank you so much to the Canadian Motorsports Hall of Fame and Canadian Tire for supporting this great organization. You know, when during our career, if we're fortunate enough to win races, obviously you know that you're going to receive a trophy, because if you finish first and you thank your teammates, duly so. And but to have a recognition such as this is something that's very different. It causes you to pause a little bit and say, okay, I'm up here alone, but my teammate on this lifetime sort of, I could say, achievement has really been my wife. And she's been the one that has been with me since the very, very first race, and never complained. She was there like a rock, allowing me to, you know, to pursue my dream. As Ron said, it's something very selfish, and I needed that. She'll never know how much she contributed to my maintaining my focus and doing something that was somewhat selfish. I often hear from my kids. I know Barbie's here with us. My daughter said, "Dad, you were not even at my graduation," and countless birthdays and picnics that our neighbors were going to that we missed because obviously I was out there on the racetrack, but horse shows that she was winning. But you know, it's like I said, it's I needed a teammate such as Deanne to be there, the rock. And 2 years ago, we celebrated our 50th anniversary together. And if you want to know why I really have a special place in my heart for Canada, is because, you know, my career spanned from 1959 to 1994, technically. That's where I hung up my helmet as far as the Indy cars. However, I did my last race in 1960 in Le Mans. But you know that I raced here in Canada from 1962 at different times until 1994. And I raced, you know, I was counting about at least seven different venues, you know, starting with Mont Tremblant. I never raced at Trois Rivers, Three Rivers. But Mont Tremblant, in Montreal, Saint-Air, Mosport, here, Toronto, Vancouver. But, and, you know, obviously, I also brought my kids over. As some of you might remember, you know, Michael himself had Jeff race in Canada at Three Rivers also in Toronto. But Michael, with the being a seven-time winner at Toronto, I guess he found his way around here pretty good. But there's a couple of things I want to share with you that kind of stood out with me over the years, and that is the very first race that I came to in Canada. It was in '62. It was a sprint car race, and I was riding really a real pig of a car. But nevertheless, it was our first venture into Canada. And so I decided that I'll treat one of our gophers, one of our buddies that was going to all the TQ races back in the States, a kid by the name of Andy Miklas, and he had never really been out of state, even in the States. So he says, you know, we're going international now. And so he came along, and but before we left, he was, you know, he was curious, and he said, you know, what's Canada like? What are we going to find up there? And I said, you know, I understand it's a beautiful country, and I said, the people might be, they're just like us. I said, but it could be a little different in some ways. I said, I heard that, I mean, some speak kind of funny languages. I said, but in general, I said, you'll be able to understand. And I said, not everybody, but some, I said, they have 6 fingers in their hand. And so, and you know, he took all this in, and what I noticed is when we arrived, you know, he just kept looking, and counting fingers, you know. So the second race that we come into Canada was somewhere in the Quebec province, and for some reason, maybe purposely, for some reason, I don't really have the real name of the track, and it might be, like I said, for a specific purpose. Somebody, I mean, I remember something like Val Saint-Michel, but, you know, anytime I mention, you know, everybody's got, you know, I don't know, you know. But anyway, this was, and this was with a midget, with the ARDC midgets were, I mean, the iconic series in the States on the East Coast, but they used to really, you know, we had all the best midget drivers in the history involved. And this was a quarter-mile asphalt track, and this is the first venture of the ARDC midgets into Canada, and this was you know, supposed to be the best paying race of the season. And when we arrived there, on the walls there, they had a bag of you know, like gold bag with gold coins, you know, painted on the wall with a big $5,000 written on there, which was supposed to constitute the prize money. And in those days, we were racing for like $1,500 total, you know. And so we figured, oh man, I mean, this is going to be good. This is our Indy 500, you know. So, and we're out there really busting our butts, you know. And again, I finished second that day, so I figured, man, this has got to be a good payday, you know. And lo and behold, the promoter was gone. And I'm on this crusade. This is not the first time that I told this story in Canada, by the way. I'm still on this crusade, you know, to figure out, you know, whether this dude is still around somewhere. And quite honestly, this six-finger thing started coming up because I bet you this guy must have 6 fingers, you know? And, you know, Sid Priddle is a promoter type, right? I mean, you know, that's when I first met him. I have not counted his fingers yet, you know what I mean? So that's part of what I'm planning to do tonight, but don't tell him, you know, I'll just try to surprise him. So, as you can see, you know, I've had plenty of experiences here, and coming back here is like coming home. I mean, the Murphys are here, family, that's our immediate family here in Canada, and many, many others. I have so many stories that I could tell you that I think it would go way beyond what our allotted time, but all I can say is thank you so much. When I received the invitation, I thought, you know, this is really cool. This is totally awesome, and I'm extremely honored to receive this. I know that Michael preceded me, but he deserves that too. But I appreciate it immensely. So.
If I could just ask you a couple of quick questions, Mario. You mentioned that Michael preceded you in being inducted into the Hall of Fame. On the front page of the Toronto Star Wheels section today is a picture of Michael and you in '91 when he finished first and you were second. So maybe there was precedent.
Yeah, I know. You know, it's a double-edged sword. But, you know, I remember in 1986 at the Portland Grand Prix, it was Father's Day. And here again, you know, Michael actually was leading the race, and he deserved to win, and I was second, and there was no way I was going to catch him. All of a sudden, with about 3 or 4 laps from the end, you know, my engineer is screaming, Michael is having some fuel pickup problems, and so on and so forth. So I stood up in that cockpit, and you know, we're coming down for the checkered flag, and like drag racing, and you know, and I heard his kind of, you know, have some hiccups and so forth. I beat him by 7 1,000ths of a second. And I have the photo, you know, and he looked over, I was looking over, and on the podium, you know, man, he was not happy. And but he realized then it was Father's Day, so he said, well, happy Father's Day, Dad. You know, so, but yeah, I mean, we had many moments like that. You know, we've been, you know, first and second in IndyCar so many times as teammates. And there was another one, I got to tell you, when the first time he actually made a competitive pass at me in an IndyCar race was at the Meadowlands Grand Prix. And Deanne knows that almost every time that we were together, you know, a little bit of touching wheels and so forth, you know, not to hurt each other, but, you know, to let each other know that, you know, I'm not going to let you have it so easily. You know, so, and this was the case, you know, that Michael was just, I mean, right on me, and finally he just makes a pass, and we touch wheels again, and I figure, well, you know, and then as he goes into the sunset, I said, well, that's my boy, you know. So
Thank you very much. Mario Andretti, ladies and gentlemen. just delightful. Now, before I ask Dr. Scully to close off these formal proceedings, I'd like to remind the inductees to please come up to the stage immediately afterward with your medallions for a group photograph. Please visit the silent auction, the upper lobby and lobby and the lower lobby out there. As the good doctor said earlier, bid often and bid high. The cash bars are open until 10 o'clock. Snacks are available, and the inductees will be available for autographs, or so I'm told. Anyway, that's the last of the official business. I will say goodnight, and Dr. Scully will close things off.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's have a hand for Norris in the way that he's conducted the evening. Congratulations to all of the inductees, and thank you all for being here. The evening is moving on. I would urge you to go to the auction, enjoy the drink, meet with the inductees, and we look forward to seeing you again next year. Thank you very much for coming.